Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Liberal Democrats have launched their election campaigns, saying they are the only party with a clear-cut pledge to stop Brexit in its tracks. Speaking in central London, party leader Jo Swinson said this election could bring about a seismic change in British politics, putting her in number 10. She claimed the economy would benefit from a Remain bonus, an extra £50 billion to spend on public services over the next 5 years. And Brexit was never far away as both Labour and the Conservatives continued their campaigns. Here's our political editor, Laura Koonsberg, and her report does contain some flashing images.
Our Liberal Democrat candidate for Prime Minister, Jo Swinson.
A Liberal Democrat candidate for Prime Minister? Could Jo Swinson really transform a dozen from 2017 into a group who could govern?
This is not a normal election. It's not a typical choice about whether you want the red team or the blue team to be in government.
Her ranks have grown as Brexit has rippled through the two big parties. But as a tribe who unashamedly wants to keep us in the EU, the LibDems believe their best chance is now.
I never thought that I would stand here and say that I'm a candidate to be Prime Minister. But when I look at Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, I am absolutely certain I could do a better job than either of them.
Honest whispers suggest number 10 is out of reach. So if no one got a majority, would she, could she, prop up one of the others?
I am absolutely, categorically ruling out Liberal Democrat votes putting Jeremy Corbyn into number 10.
You said this morning you want to bring the country together, but how would you do that if your plan is to disregard the vote of millions of people in the referendum of 2016?
As Liberal Democrats, we're standing up for what we believe in and being very honest and straightforward about that. I recognise there are differences of opinion on this issue.
It's a new politics now, and I do think they really have a chance to form a government.
Very optimistic, and it's a really good feeling actually, going out on the doorstep, very, very positive feedback.
If you get more than 50 to 80 plus, I'll be happy with that.
Labour will come knocking with a different proposal for Brexit. After months of internal agonies, they're suggesting, if they win, they'd negotiate a different deal with Brussels and then, within 6 months, give you another choice of leaving or staying in.
A Labour government will get Brexit sorted within 6 months. It won't be a rerun of 2016. This time, the choice will be between leaving with a sensible deal or remaining in the EU. That is the policy. It really isn't very complicated.
Believe it or not, the official campaign hasn't started, but we're speeding through those Kodak moments already. The SNP refrain, familiar too.
This is an election about who decides the future of Scotland. If we allow Westminster to do that, we risk being taken out of the EU against our will.
Of course, more than a third of people in Scotland did vote to leave. And he's sent everyone to the polls because it hasn't happened yet.
Do you feel up for the campaign? And
Yeah.
I think you do. You look as though you're full of beans.
Will you be back as a government health secretary?
However bouncy any of our politicians appear now,
Morning, Secretary.
some of them have chosen this to be their last day. For those who want to stay, this election is a gamble that the grins can't hide. Laura Koonsberg, BBC News, Westminster.
So the Lib Dem leader has made stopping Brexit the centrepiece of her pitch to the electorate. But with just 20 MPs in the current Parliament, including those MPs who switched allegiance from both the Conservatives and Labour, what would it take for the Liberal Democrats to be in a position to deliver their Remain pledge? Our Deputy Political Editor, John Pienaar, answers that question and more.
Could the Liberal Democrats stop Brexit? It's possible. It may not seem likely, but if the Lib Dems win outright, they could cancel Brexit. If no party wins most seats, Lib Dem MPs could still press for a referendum or block future Brexit plans. Would that be democratic? We've had one referendum. Well, 17.4 million people voted to leave, but 16.1 million voted to remain. And a lot of them, younger voters and many unhappy Labour and Tory supporters, could back Jo Swinson's plan. Frankly, we don't know, but there's a lot we won't know till December the 12th.
What would the Liberal Democrats do to improve the public services?
All the main parties say they'll pump cash into public services, including the NHS, which has become a political totem. The Lib Dems say staying in the EU could strengthen the economy, generate more taxes, and that could create what they're calling a Remain bonus, £50 billion over 5 years, £10 billion a year for public services. Some respected analysts, like the Institute for Fiscal Studies, agree, and so do government estimates, that staying in the EU could strengthen the economy. But £10 billion is a relatively small sum compared to the value of the economy in a year, over £800 billion. And forecasts have a way of being knocked off course by events.
Could Lib Dem leader Jo Swinson be our next Prime Minister?
Well, anything's possible in politics, almost anything. But as Jo Swinson seemed to accept today, under our voting system, it would be a huge surprise if the Lib Dems won outright and she ended up in number 10. But if the Lib Dems held the balance of power at Westminster, they could have a say in who is to be the next PM. Jo Swinson says she won't back Jeremy Corbyn, or Boris Johnson, since he's a Brexiteer who won't rule out leaving with no deal. There'll be no coalition government involving the Lib Dems. They got their fingers burnt after joining the Tories in 2010. But you won't necessarily need to be in government to have a big say over policy, politics and Brexit.
And that was John Pienaar reporting there. And our political editor, Laura Koonsberg, is in Westminster for us. So, Laura, we heard the Lib Dems message loud and clear there. But it's early days, I know. But politicians can't always control the agenda, can they?
That's absolutely right, George. I mean, the Lib Dems are aiming high this time. They believe that this is a very unpredictable election, and after the crazy politics of the last few years, they're probably right about that. By the same token, though, as John was suggesting, they're not really completely holding a serious expectation that Jo Swinson could somehow win outright under this system and end up in number 10. But what they want to do is create a sense that the Lib Dems believe genuinely that they could take a very significant step forward rather than just edging up and grabbing a few extra MPs here and there. So that's really the pitch that they're setting out. And in an unpredictable time, the result is very, very hard to know. But what we also saw today, even before the campaign proper gets underway, is a very, very strong reminder for all the parties that they don't set the agenda. This will be an unpredictable few days, and predictably, if you like, they can lose control. Those remarks by the Leader of the House of Commons, the Conservative Jacob Rees-Mogg, were ill-judged by any standard and insensitive, certainly, and dangerous politically for the Conservatives, whose rivals will spend the next 6 weeks saying to the country, accusing them of being out of touch and simply not understanding how millions of people in the country feel about their lives and the struggle that they have just trying to get by. Despite the apology from Jacob Rees-Mogg, that may well be something that sticks in the campaign's weeks ahead.
Laura, thank you very much.
Well, on the campaign trail, Labour and the Conservatives have been trading blows over Brexit and its impact on the NHS. Jeremy Corbyn insisted he could get Brexit sorted within 6 months and accused Boris Johnson of being willing to sell off the health service in a trade deal with the United States. The Tories denied that and hit back at Labour's Brexit stance, saying it would result in paralysing uncertainty. Romilly Weeks reports on the building election battle.
Jeremy Corbyn is not wasting time. Straight into Tory territory in Essex today and straight onto the attack on what he claims Brexit would mean for the NHS.
Johnson's Trump deal Brexit puts a price tag on our National Health Service. So we'll say it again and again until the message gets through to the White House. Our NHS is not for sale.
Labour activists have a new rallying cry as Jeremy Corbyn also tried to allay fears his Brexit plan would drag on and on.
A Labour government will get Brexit sorted within 6 months. by giving you, the British people, the final say.
President Trump has denied the NHS is on the table in any future trade talks. The government has categorically ruled it out. This is just a useful scare story for you, isn't it?
I believe the danger is very, very real indeed. That Johnson's trade deal with the USA will result in a demand by American companies for access to what they term the British health market.
For Boris Johnson, chairing his last pre-election cabinet.
Do you feel up for the campaign and
The idea of any sell-off of the NHS is one the Tories need to try to squash quickly.
We will be absolutely clear with the US, and we have been. The NHS is not on the table, drug prices are not on the table.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. How are you?
Back in Essex, Jeremy Corbyn was meeting carefully selected voters to hear their concerns.
Sort of cuts in funding, schools and the NHS.
Harlow is currently Tory in a strong Leave voting area, which is why in places like this, Labour wants to do everything it can to link Boris Johnson's Brexit deal to problems for the NHS.
But as we found, he hadn't won over everyone here.
Always voted Labour, but I won't vote Labour again.
Who do you trust most on Brexit?
No one.
No, we're pretty...
Because not a single one of them has been consistent in what they've said.
I've been trained in this.
Jeremy Corbyn might suffer in areas like this from having a Brexit plan that tries to appeal to all sides, but he's showing no qualms about attempting to weaponise the NHS to his advantage. Romilly Weeks, ITV News, Harlow.
Well, the election campaign doesn't officially start until tomorrow, but Jo Swinson held the Lib Dems launch today, promising to deliver seismic change. She ruled out propping up a Jeremy Corbyn government and promised to stop Brexit and deliver a £50 billion Remain bonus if she becomes PM. Well, as to the chances of that, she told our political editor Robert Peston, stranger things have happened.
It's been almost 100 years since anyone but a Tory or Labour leader has been Prime Minister. But that apparently doesn't bother Jo Swinson.
I am excited to stand here as your candidate for Prime Minister because a Liberal Democrat government will stop Brexit and build a brighter future.
Can you tell me when in history a party has come from your position in the polls to win a general election and form a government? Isn't the truth that your enthusiasm for triggering a general election was about winning a few extra seats, but at the potential cost of delivering the Brexit you say that you hate?
You mentioned history. I mean, a few years ago, the Canadian Liberal Party came from third place in the opinion polls to win a majority. Stranger things have happened in our own country. I vividly remember the 2015 general election when the SNP went from 6 to 56 seats in Scotland. So I think, and I believe, politics is different now because that fault line has shifted.
So Jo Swinson has just made what some would say is quite remarkable claim that she thinks her party can come from third place to form a government. I'm off to Richmond to see if that's true. Why Richmond? Well, that's because it's a Tory marginal, and if they can't win Richmond, the question is, where can the Lib Dems win?
So how shipshape are the Lib Dems? Boathouse owner Mark Edwards isn't sure.
This is a marginal between the Lib Dems and the Tories. Got a sense of how you might go?
That's a very difficult decision. It is a very difficult decision, and I don't know the answer to it.
I'm probably tilting towards the Lib Dems, but I've never been completely convinced by them, so it's a question of whether they can convince me over the next few weeks.
Do you have a sense of who you're going to back?
Very clear, yeah. Lib Dem. In this area, yeah, absolutely.
So, how are you feeling about this election?
Well, I would like to be excited about it, especially coming before Christmas, but I'm not, because I have to be quite honest, because there's been too much for so long about politics and Brexit.
A new canvas for Britain being painted over the coming weeks. Can a Lib Dem Prime Minister actually be round that bend? Well, it's doubtful, but as Jo Swinson says, we're living through unusual times. Robert Peston in Richmond, London for ITV News.
Well, elsewhere today, the SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon wasn't so much facing the music as providing it.
And I saw her face
Now I'm a believer.
Scotland's First Minister joined musicians in Midlothian and said that while she isn't a believer in forming a coalition with Labour, she said she would work with Jeremy Corbyn to keep Boris Johnson out of Downing Street.
Every Tory seat in Scotland has the SNP as the main challenger. So if you want to deprive Boris Johnson of a majority, if you want to put Scotland in the position where perhaps we hold the balance of power after this election, then voting SNP is the way to achieve that.
And at a boxing club in Derbyshire, Nigel Farage kept up his fighting talk. The Brexit Party leader said he remains prepared to work with the Prime Minister towards delivering a harder Brexit, but he insisted that he will contest more than 600 seats unless he and the Tories find common ground by the end of next week.
The Labour Party now want a second referendum, which is an absolute kick in the teeth to people in towns like this with 70% Leave votes. And the Tory Party, well, it's a Remainers Brexit.
Well, one familiar face we won't be seeing out campaigning is the former Chancellor Philip Hammond. This afternoon, he announced that he would not be standing again. He'd previously suggested he would run as an independent candidate after having had the Conservative whip taken away for rebelling. Well, Carl Dinnan is in the Houses of Parliament for us this evening. Carl, how much of a surprise is this?
Well, it is a surprise because Philip Hammond had insisted that he wanted to run at this election. But this afternoon, as you said, he announced to his constituents that it was with great sadness that he would not be standing. And that's because he hadn't been given the whip back. It would mean that if he did stand, he would therefore be standing against an official Conservative Party candidate. And that would mean he would get kicked out of the party altogether. And he said that however aggrieved he felt at the way he had been treated, he did still remain a Conservative. So he now joins the list of round about 60 MPs from this place. Some of them have been saying goodbye in the chamber today, who will definitely not be coming back because they will not be standing. Others are taking a different approach. Another of those Tories who lost the whip, Anne Milton, announced today that she would be standing as an independent candidate at the election. But it is the news that Philip Hammond, former Defence Secretary, former Foreign Secretary, and until just a few months ago, Chancellor of the Exchequer, it's the news that he will not be standing at the general election that is the biggest, clearest indicator yet, I think, that the Conservative Parliamentary Party that comes back here after the election will have a much more Brexity flavour than it does at the moment.
OK, Carl Dinnan at Westminster, thank you.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn has set out Labour's plans on Brexit, claiming the party would get it sorted within 6 months of winning power. Mr Corbyn promised to negotiate a better exit deal and put it to the public in another referendum next summer, a plan dismissed by the Tories as a recipe for paralysing uncertainty. The Liberal Democrats also launched their general election campaign as Jo Swinson declared she would be a better Prime Minister than either of her two main party rivals. Our political correspondent Paul McNamara reports, and a warning: this report does contain flash photography.
Out on the campaign trail and interacting with voters. That's the key issue for many, and today Jeremy Corbyn laid out Labour's policy.
A Labour government will get Brexit sorted within 6 months by giving you, the British people, the final say. And despite what some commentators want you to believe, Labour's plan for Brexit is clear and simple.
That clear and simple policy: new Brexit extension, negotiate new Brexit deal, and then new referendum, all within 6 months. But the line you can expect to hear much more of from Labour during this election was this crowd pleaser.
Our NHS is not for sale. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you.
The message the Conservatives want to push, though, is Brexit and then being the party to push it through quickly. A point Boris Johnson used his final cabinet meeting to tell the nation.
We have it ready to go, oven ready, and the choice before the country is really very clear. Do you want to go forward with our agenda, which is to get Brexit done, and then get on with delivering all the wonderful things we want to do for this country in 2020?
From smiling incumbents who want a quick Brexit to challengers desperate to revoke Article 50 and deliver a £50 billion, quote, Remain bonus for public services.
When I I look at Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, I am absolutely certain I could do a better job than either of them.
The message from the Lib Dem launch: this is a leader who says she believes she can be Prime Minister despite only having 21 MPs at present. And however many MPs she has in 6 weeks' time, they won't be used to prop someone else up.
I am absolutely, categorically ruling out Liberal Democrat votes putting Jeremy Corbyn into number 10.
Last week, the gloves came off when the Brexit Party threatened to wage war on the Tories. Yet for round one of this election, they put the gloves on and headed to the Labour-dominated north. Why?
If you were a Labour leaver living here, you've got every right to feel very, very angry. And I think those voters are much more likely to vote Brexit Party than they are to vote for a Conservative.
Why is that?
Because there's a cultural, tribal, blue v red rosette that goes back generations in families, whereas the Brexit Party is a coming together of people from across the political spectrum. A lot of our candidates in areas like this are ex-Labour supporters themselves.
As of tonight, there are no MPs. The gates locked, Parliament dissolved.
Hands off strangers!
When they return, it will be to a new Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. His presence in Parliament post-election, possibly the only certainty of this campaign.